Before the addiction, he was actually doing pretty well. He very focused on himself at times. Like I said, he liked to go to the gym. He always looked well. He took better care of himself. He seemed to have more goals than he did once the drug addiction came upon him. Once that came into play, all life changed for him. He just basically went downhill. Hi, my name is Michele, and I'm here to talk about my son and his drug addiction. It actually began in his early years when he was diagnosed with ADHD, and the struggle that we had with him throughout the school system and just coping with his behavioral issues. After years have passed and he started going into his teenage years, this is when all the other problems began. First, it was alcohol, being put into a prison and jails and fines, and he almost lost his life many times from just drinking alone. And then he left the alcohol to go into the drugs, and that's when it all began. He was also asking for money, which comes into enabling and caretaking roles that I tried to get myself out from because I knew that it would only kill him at the end. Well, I tried to help him. I tried to get him into a rehab that we knew of up in New York State. He knew of it. And he was an adult. He was 28 years old. And I couldn't make him do anything, but I tried every time that I seen him or talked to him on the phone to go to this rehab. They don't only help with drug addiction, but they also help with life skills, something that he desperately needed as well. Eventually, he didn't really talk to me that much. He was almost in his own world, because he knew that I was trying to help him desperately. But when you're an addict, you really just don't want to listen to anyone else. You want to do your own thing out here and be left alone. But when he needed money, that's when we would usually get phone calls from him. I don't blame myself, and I don't actually blame anyone else because he took it upon himself to get addicted. And the only way to get off that addiction is to go into a rehab and actually want to come off the addiction. The person that's addicted needs to want to be not addicted anymore, or it will never happen.
Do you consider yourself a victim?
I'm not sure if I'm really a victim. I mean, I went through the process of his drug addiction because when there is something going on in the family that has to do with this topic, everyone is included. So in a sense, I'm a victim for all the things he went through and his issues, but I wasn't, involved with him, or, I wasn't a contributor to his drug abuse addiction.
How was life before the addiction?
Jeffrey's always seemed to have many problems focusing because he was diagnosed with the ADHD, probably should have been on medicine for that alone. And even though he seemed like he wanted to get somewheres in life, he seemed to have issues all the time with the law, the drugs and the alcohol. There were times that he was actually doing well. He joined a gym and he seemed to go through extremes, ups and downs, which reminded me he may have had bipolar too, along with the ADHD. And when he was doing good, he was doing good. And when he was doing bad, he was doing very bad. And, he had an anger issue problems as well. And we always thought that may have been through the drugs. So he was in and out of rehabs. And, he would come back either to my home or my parents. He resided either home. We both, tried to help him out. He worked. Once in a while he worked part-time, sometimes full-time, but he could never really hold down a job for a very long time, and this is how we knew that that he needed excessive help out here. When I found out about his addiction, I was very upset, specifically with the heroin. I knew he was smoking pot occasionally. It bothered me, but it wasn't as bad as when I found out that he was actually doing heroin, and that I know of that drug particularly being a killer. Well, he actually started around, 14, 15 years old with the drinking, and it led into smoking pot. And then somewheres around in the 20s, he went into using heroin.
Have you ever been addicted to anything?
No, I have never been addicted to anything.
Do you think that anybody addicted to any type of substance abuse can come out of their addiction by themselves?
No, absolutely not. I feel they need the help of these certain type of people who work in these rehabs. Their experience, and they deal with the problem and try to get you back on your 2 feet so you can be normal again. We didn't ignore the signs. We tried talking to him as much as we possibly could, and there were many times that he said he wasn't. He would deny it, that he wasn't using anymore. Specifically when, we were to give him money, when he needed money for certain things, he would always deny that he was using it. And then at some point later on, he would say that he was using again, but not much. He was trying to take care of the addiction himself by using other alternative forms to stop the addiction. And he was in a lot of car accidents. He almost died a couple times. Yeah, doing, who knows what he was doing, maybe ecstasy, alcohol, we don't know everything. He was in the hospital a couple times. He was in jail for theft, and we even went to prison a couple times. He was in a boys' home. We put him into Bonnie Bray. It's a boys' home, that's all it is. They try to straighten him out and work with these kids down there. All the way up to 18 years old, they'll take him. He was in there for about a year and a half. I guess once they feel they're doing better, they let them go, because it was through the state that I got him into that school. Otherwise, I would never been able to, afford it. But through DIFUS and everything, they assist you with, child problems. And, this was the foundation of everything before all this other stuff took place. So we went through a lot all these years with the drugs and the alcohol was tremendous, and then it would stop that, and then he went to the drugs more. It was more into that then. And then the pot didn't seem to be too bad, but then he went from pot to Xanax and heroin, and that's when it got bad. And of course, it was the worst. It took his life. He was beat up many times, and he was also selling Xanax down there. And the night he ran out, in the middle of the night, he was actually high on Xanax, because his girlfriend confirmed it. She knew that he was taking Xanax that night. My son was killed. He was a hit and run, but by 3 cars. It was the 3rd car actually that stopped to see what he ran into, and the police came, and my son was pronounced dead at 5 a.m. July 6, 2014. And he was high on heroin that night. He was high on Xanax, for sure. The heroin, we believe he took afterwards. His girlfriend confirmed it. So we think that maybe he went out to try to sell some Xanax that night, or he was also high on it, and maybe did heroin on top of the Xanax. Went out into the streets trying to walk or whatever, and collapsed from what the bad heroin and the Xanax. He used to fall into the ground a lot with the Xanax, and was hit by a car. That's what I'm assuming that happened. I'll never know, because the camera system wasn't exactly working down there in Newark. Well, they have cameras, but it's very dark, and they couldn't pinpoint him, and so it's a mystery. Maybe he was beat up and they threw him out in the street. But how will I ever know? I just won't, I'll never know. Nobody will ever confess. It's been almost a year. I never heard anything more. It's almost like a murder, where you don't know who murdered the person. That's, I don't think he was, but he could have been. But I just will never know, because nothing ever happened. He was run over by a car. He may have been beat up and thrown out into the street. But he put himself out there into this position. You got to watch how you handle yourself and what you do in life. You can't just you know, do the things that he was doing. Had no lack or common sense, and the drugs are one of the reason why. Drugs will do everything they bring you out of reality. They just, you know, camouflage everything, and you think everything, he's invincible. That's what he felt, and that's how it all took place. You know, that's how it all happened. You know, no fears. Anybody that has any fears or common sense wouldn't go out in the middle of the night down there in the ghetto. I mean, he didn't belong down there. He didn't need to be there. It was a bad place to begin with. There's drug dealers, there's guns, there's everything down there, you know, and he put himself right out in there and hung out with them. And I couldn't stop him. I couldn't. We talked many times, many times.
So, what would you say to people who are watching this? How could you encourage them by watching this?
Well, what I would do is, you know, for especially your children that are underage, for sure, to make sure that they're not addicted, to watch what they're doing and, you know, pay attention to their lifestyle. After they're 18, it's more difficult because then they're adult. You can only suggest things to them, but I would always, you know, be involved in their life as much as you possibly can. And if you see anything, don't hesitate to get them the help that they need.
Do you think his friends influenced him, or he did it himself to become an addict?
I feel he did it himself. And it may have given him some relief towards his ADHD. Sometimes they like to medicate themselves, or he actually liked getting high. From what I understand, I believe that was part of it. And he just lost all responsibilities to life itself. In the last year of Jeffrey's life, actually, he started dropping down so much that I've never seen him look and be in the condition that he was in from the heroin, what it was doing to him. And he was living with his girlfriend, who was not an addict, but more of probably the caretaker, enabler, just because she lived with him. And if she had pushed him more towards me, he probably would have went into the rehab that I was trying to get him into, that he desperately needed to be. And he just started, you know, just losing all sense of life itself, just everything to do with life, because heroin takes the life out of you. That's exactly what heroin's all about, until it kills you, and it will eventually, because there's all different strains of heroin out here. And apparently he had the wrong one that night that he ran out in the middle of the night, when he was also high on Xanax to begin with. Well, for me, it's been very upsetting to lose my son. He's my only son, and I love him very much, and I miss him, and I wanted so much more for him. He was only 28 years old, and I know there are cures out here for this disease, and drug addiction is a disease. And so I knew that it could have happened if he would have let me take control and gotten him the help that he desperately needed to get. But he pushed me away many times, and he didn't want to leave, and you know, he would have left his girlfriend, and he was involved in a school system. He was going to medical assistant school to learn, and he was being paid by the state to go, so he didn't want to let that all go as well. But that was not important at the time. His life was. And he just didn't value his life. You know, he took it for granted. And that's what happens with these drug addicts. They take their life for granted, and a lot of times they die.
And what would you say to a parent who may actually right now be going through what you were going through?
I would suggest to them to get the help that you can for them. If you possibly can, continuously try in the best way you know how, because it can get out of control. And once it does, it can take their life. And, you know, once they're an adult, it's very difficult to make them do anything. But I would say just push as hard as you can, as much as I tried to. And really, that's all you can do.
Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Joy, and I'm the owner of Be the Difference LLC, an inspirational t-shirt company that aims to encourage and inspire all. One of my t-shirts, Addiction Kills the Family, has birthed this series that you will be watching called Our Lives Seen Through My Eyes. If you would like to have information on being a part, please email info@beatadifferencellc.com.